Today's Patreon shoutout goes to Z. Coma versus Thassa, and if we can get into another land, it's a turn 3 Sky Shroud claim, so we'll certainly try this. Okay, there's a midnight clock for us, so we can at least play that if we can't go for the Sky Shroud claim. Let's try 3 visits against the mono blue player. And we managed to land our shock land in tap there. A Mind Stone from our opponent. We do manage to get into the land that we needed, so that can be Sky Shroud claim. It accelerates us ahead faster than the midnight clock. And then we could go for Unnatural Restoration onto the land, but I think it's best to hold that up for when we actually want to cast it on something, and when the Flux Channeler is in play as well, plus we don't have anything to proliferate at the moment. There is Fibblethip the Lost. Alright, and we get into a land, so let's try the midnight clock. Okay, and that warrants a counterspell apparently, so now I think we're okay to get down the Ezuri. We've got a means of proliferate in our hands, so I'm okay getting it down for only 4 mana here. And we can grab back the midnight clock with the Unnatural Restoration anyway. So we see our opponent's commander, as you would expect, so going for the Song of the Dryads or Imprisoned in the Moon onto that would be excellent. Okay, drawing into another land. So if we go for Flux Channeler, the Unnatural Restoration, and we'll be able to go for Midnight Clock there as well, so that's really good. Flux Channeler first, because that will trigger on the Unnatural Restoration. Point that at Midnight Clock. Nothing to proliferate, but we will draw regardless. Another land for us, so let me crack this Windswept Heath now. And then proliferate on the Unnatural Restoration as well. Will draw us into Oko, which doesn't necessarily help us with the Thassa. So yeah, we'll just go for the Midnight Clock again, which will cantrip us, as long as those 2 creatures stay in play. And there we see a Soul Ring as well. We need a lot of mana in this deck, so yeah, we're doing okay. Swinging for some commander damage, because they're not going to block with the Fibblethip. Okay, Ezuri, Lord High Artificer, is going to bring down another construct at the end of the turn, you would think. They're at 7 cards in hand, so yeah, I don't think they're going to flicker the Homunculus. It will be the Urza. And it's yet another land for us. We need to stop drawing into those. So let's see. We'll put down the Oko first, and we can start turning these constructs into 3/3 Elks so that they don't get too big. Looks like our opponent is alright going for a Pongify, which is unfortunate. Really wanted to keep that. Flux Channeler doing a lot of work for us. And that's annoying, I forgot to proliferate with the Midnight Clock. Getting to Conjurer's Closet, so we'll tick up on the Oko onto a Construct token, and then we'll drop the Soul Ring. And this means that we can go Conjurer's Closet and we can flicker the Ezuri, and that will proliferate twice and draw us a couple of cards. Not going to swing into a 3/3 because they'll just trade us for it. So we will proliferate this time onto the Oko and the Midnight Clock. And the same again because we proliferate twice with this ability. And that means that we draw twice. Okay, so there's Replicating Ring and a Chasm Skulker as well. Unfortunately, our opponent's still got a full grip of 7. Doesn't have too much mana though, does seem to be struggling on the lands, which is fine with me against a Thassa deck. Okay, spoke too soon. There's a Peregrine Drake. Can obviously tap down the construct for a blue mana with the Urza as well. Noteworthy that this isn't an artifact anymore thanks to Oko. And there's Barin, excellent. They can only flicker one thing with the commander at least, but it looks as though the Oko is going to go down. Or maybe not, we could chump block the Thassa, they have tapped this thing down now. Yeah, it's noteworthy as well that we could actually turn this into an Elk if our opponent isn't careful. That would take away their flicker shenanigans. Okay, so that will be 3, 4, 5 damage onto the Oko, so the Proliferate last turn is relevant because we're keeping our Oko here. And for some reason the Elk ability is a +1 on that thing. So we chump block the Thassa, lose the Ape token but keep our Oko. Might be that they can flicker the Peregrine Drake and do something during our turn, because they do untap some lands here. Okay, allowing us through to our turn. Displace a Kitten is very obnoxious, so we'll plus on the Oko, deal with that Thassa. Okay, countering an ability maybe. That is a displace. Exile up to 2 creatures you control and return them to the battlefield. So I'm assuming they're doing that with the Thassa. It's only pointed at the Drake at the moment. Okay, so yeah, they didn't flicker their Thassa there like they were supposed to, I don't think. But they can use abilities like this to bring the Thassa back into play anyway. Blue doesn't have too many of them, which is a blessing. So let's throw ourselves down a Displacer Kitten. Or try to. Have to try and get through the counter magic, alright, and that does happen. So now it can be Replicating Ring, the only non-creature that we have in our hand. Flickering the Oko. Alright, and there is the Essence Flux, so now going to go for the Barin. They can return a creature or planeswalker to owner's hand, okay. I mean, we just replay the Oko at that point. They're having to play cards from their hand here to do the whole flicker thing. Okay, it's bouncing the Displacer Kitten. That's done all it can for us at the moment. So, flickering the Oko, we can plus it again. Turn the... I mean, it doesn't really matter. We could take mana away from them and go for Mind Stone. That will debuff the construct as well. We'll do that. Again, they can flicker this thing to get the Mind Stone back, but it just takes mana away from them for now. Play a land. Play the Champion of Lamholt so that we can start getting counters on this thing. And then we'll get down the Chasm Skulker as well, so there'll be a plus counter on this next turn. Champion of Lamholt gets its first one here, so that we can actually make use of the Proliferate stuff. And yeah, just passing the turn at that. Fortunately, we're going to take a fairly decent amount of damage here, but our opponent's hardly touched us at the moment, thankfully. Okay, there's a Phyrexian Metamorph. That can come down as a copy of the Thassa. And it won't be an elk, as far as I'm aware. Okay, just copying the Soul Ring instead to try and fix their mana. So it was relevant that we went after the Mind Stone. I think they have dropped a land this turn as well. Only 2 cards left in hand. Some of this damage has to be dedicated to Oko, surely. Yeah, I think we just let our opponent take out the Oko. In fact, they're going wide, so there's nothing we can do about it. We can take out the Fibblethip, though. Noteworthy that they don't want to risk losing the Barin. Okay, I'm pulling everything back. Yeah, and then swinging in with the exact same creatures again, so get rid of the cantrip creature, and everything else can get rid of Oko. Okay, so we get our first counter onto the Replicating Ring. Chasm Skulker will get its first counter here as well. We get another Proliferate thing in Tainted Observer, and that's a means of Toxic as well. So, let's get that into play. Our opponent might have counter magic, held on to priority for a little bit there. Plus counter went onto the champion. We'll play our commander again. Okay, and that enters play, so Tainted Observer on the stack, champion on the stack. We're definitely going to put the 3 mana into Ezuri. So Proliferate onto our 2 creatures, Midnight Clock and the Rep Ring. Obviously we're doing this twice with our Ezuri. And then we draw cards to the Ezuri as well, so this gets even bigger, the Chasm Skulker. Then we've got Nature's Law. I think we're okay to put 2 mana into the Tainted Observer. So say yes to that and hit the same targets again. And then during our opponent's next turn, we are going to shuffle around with the Midnight Clock. That is a hell of a draw, the Nykthos. So we can make, I think we've got more blue mana maybe. 1, 2, 3, 4. And then green, 1, 2, 3, 4. So yeah, maybe just get down the Displacer Kitten here. Crack the Misty Rainforest. Nykthos makes us 4 blue mana, and that means that we can get down a Displacer Kitten before we shuffle with the Midnight Clock next turn. Can't pay for that, but the Champion of Lamholt gets another counter, so these cards are unblockable now, which means we're landing 16 points of damage on our opponent with those 2. Yeah, our opponent losing the Thass has been huge here. Conjurer's Closet. Is this when it dies? Yeah, it's only when it dies, so we can't make a bunch of squid with that. We'll just point it at the Simic creature here, but we're not going to flicker it. It's noteworthy that we can flicker another creature into this with the Conjurer's Closet and trigger it again, because it's on ETB of a creature. Alright, so we lose a mana here, but we are going to refill our hand. Shuffle our whole library around. Chasm Skulker gets a load more plus counters on it. And our opponent has a few answers to deal with here, because that thing is now a 15/15. There are exile effects in blue, so We have to watch out for those. Our opponent gets into a Sol Ring of his own, 2 cards left in hand. Funny that we drew into the Oko again after it giving our opponent such a headache. And now a washout. All permanents of a colour return to owner's hands, so yeah, they named blue here surely. No, they named green so that they could get their commander and Mind Stone back. But we've got an Ugin that we can slam down next turn, so we can get rid of the Thassa. I'm assuming that they're going to flicker, maybe they flicker the Peregrine Drake, maybe the Baron to get rid of the Chasm Skulker, because they might be worried about that gaining unblockable. Maybe they want to untap their mana, obviously depends on what 2 cards are in their hand. Okay, they're flickering Baron, so you assume they go after the Chasm Skulker. If that's the case, then we can slam down an Ugin next turn. No. The Baron targeted their Peregrine Drake, fair enough. And they drew a card to the Baron. Not sure if they've made a few misclicks here. Yeah, that was a misclick. I noticed that with the Displace as well. They should have flickered the Thassa so that we couldn't get the Oko effect on there. Would have flickered it and got the Thassa anyway. So it didn't really matter, but yeah, bouncing their own Peregrine Drake, I think what they were trying to do is flicker the Baron, bounce our big creature, and then they wouldn't be able to take a big hit to it. But next turn we just go for the Ugin. If they do that, we'll lose our Displacer Kitten, but they'll lose their entire board pretty much. And then we can probably still do a load of stuff after that. So that was pretty good showing with our Ezuri deck. Hopefully you all enjoyed it. We'll play another one, I think. Ezuri versus Tariel with a 2-lander and nothing else to do pretty much. We want to be ramping, so gonna have to mulligan that one. That is way better. We will keep and get rid of the Serum Snare, even though it's a proliferate effect. Alright, drawing into another island, so just throw down the tap land and pass. A Swiftfoot Boots from our opponent, setting up for the commander no doubt. Another land for us. We want to stop drawing into those if we can help it. Alright, so Hinterland Harbour drawing into the Mana Vault, so that could be good next turn, or over the next few turns. We'll see what we draw into and what our opponent does. The Forgotten Ancient, obviously going to give us something to proliferate. Alright, no spells from my opponent, so not sure what the deal is there. A Conjurer's Closet could be good to get into so that we can flicker the Ezuri. We're going pretty slow here, but our opponent's not doing much of anything either, so we'll just go for the Closet. That puts the first plus counter on the Forgotten Ancient because it's the first spell that it's seen. Alright, there we go, the Soul Shatters, so that gets rid of that thing anyway. We can still go for the Ezuri next turn and proliferate just for the sake of drawing cards. It was a Firemine Vessel that time, and here we see a Herald of Secret Streams. No means of putting a plus counter on it though, unfortunately. So let's go for the Mana Vault. Play the Ezuri Stalker. Like I said, nothing to proliferate unfortunately, but we'll still draw cards even though that's the case. We're still proliferating. And that draws us into Unnatural Restoration and Hardened Scales as well, so throw that into play. And then we can flicker the Ezuri Stalker, but no point in doing that because when it re-enters we can still pay the 3 and proliferate again, but obviously don't have the mana held up here. Unnatural Restoration can get back the Forgotten Ancient, and it will draw us a card as well, as long as our commander stays in play. Seraph Sanctuary into play, so our opponent can afford to get down the commander and the Swiftfoot Boots here. Okay, instead going for the Angel of Wrath, so yeah, they're going to be able to blow up our commander here, I imagine, gain a life from the land. So this thing now getting haste, deciding not to swing in with it though. The Mana Vault, we're not going to bother untapping here. Okay, so we're not going to keep Narset in play thanks to the flyers that we're likely to have to deal with. I think it's best pulling out the Forgotten Ancient whilst it's the only card that is in the graveyard that's relevant to our opponent. Does mean that we're foregoing the Proliferate, unfortunately, but needs must. So throwing down the Forgotten Ancient, and we won't bother flickering it, because obviously that will remove any plus counters from it if we do that at some point. Only 2 cards left in our opponent's hand, they go up to 3 at the draw step, but nothing to reanimate now, thankfully. So there we see a Mind Stone. We will, yes, put the plus counter on the Forgotten Ancient. And now our opponent's commander, which is not going to have haste and hexproof on it, They are going to swing in and gain some life with that Angel though. And thanks to the hardened scales, we've got a bunch of plus counters on here. Okay, there's a Peer, Imaginative Rascal as well. So let's get as many creatures into play as possible so that we've actually got something to distribute plus counters onto. I'll go for the Peer. This will allow us to go after the Toothy as well, which isn't something you can often do with these partner cards. Sometimes you'll play them in decks where the colours don't match. But there's a Toothy for us, so we'll play that here. And that puts the Forgotten Ancient as a 9/12, so it was well worth foregoing the Proliferate previously. We will swing in with our 9/12, make sure this doesn't have Death Touch. It is a Mardu commander. And then I don't think there's much point in flickering anything. The Conjurer's Closet hasn't done too much for us this game. Really in here for the commander, but if we can't have the commander stick, then yeah, could be a little bit of a win more card, I suppose. All we ultimately want to do is dodge any removal here, because if we can get some plus counters onto Toothy, we'll be looking pretty good, but I imagine in a Tariel deck they're going to have a lot of removal. There is a Mythos of Snapdax, so it's more plus counters and stuff. They actually get to choose 4 as annoyingly, so they're going to allow us to keep the Peer and the tapped Mana Vault. Yeah, the Toothy leaving play is not going to draw us a card because it didn't have any plus counters on it. They're going to get to reanimate something here though, and of course it is the Toothy. So getting down the Narset would be a good idea, but we need a flyer to actually protect it. Another mana rock from our opponent means they're at 1 card in hand. So if we can get rid of this Toothy, that would be good. Bouncing it would be good because it'll obviously put it back into our hand. So probably go for the Narset. Okay, there's a Vivian so that we can start doing plus counter stuff. So we'll do the Narset first because we might be able to get into a means of bounce like I said, but Vivian can fight the Toothy. We get lots of loyalty counters on the Narset thanks to Toothy, wow. And yeah, Displace the Kitten would have been nice, but clearing a lot of mana off the top, that is not nothing from the Narset. Obviously would have been nice to get a card though. So it's going to have to be the Vivian. And we just go for the -3 here. I'm just making sure it's not fight. It's a one-sided fight, I think, yeah. So we'll deal with this Toothy before it becomes too much of a threat. They can try and get it back next turn, but it is a random effect. Might as well swing in with Peer. Don't think they're going to be attacking with any hasters, although they might do. They're probably going to be flyers in this deck, though. There is a Fiara's Retribution. And then swinging in, their commander has Vigilance, so they can do the ability after or during combat. Which Planeswalker do you want to deal with? Alright, leaving us with the Narset, that's surprising. No cards in our opponent's hand at least. Okay, now going for Tariel. And getting into the Toothy again. Pretty unlucky for us. Alright, there's Beast Within, so we could blow up their commander, I suppose. Let's go for Narset once more. Alright, there's a Sol Ring, Garruk, Primal Hunter. Isn't as good as I would like it to be. And Vivian. I think it might just have to be the Sol Ring, annoyingly. Yeah, we just want more mana, I think, so play out the Sol Ring. And we'll go for this Ezuri. And we're just a mana shy of doing the Proliferate things, so can't even draw cards here. They draw a card and put a plus counter onto the Toothy. We go up to chapter 2 on the Saga, so they're going to be able to blow things up with their Angels. Dropping a land. They drew into a land off the top this turn. Haven't actually dealt any commander damage to us with the Tariel yet. So yeah, the Angel goes after the Narset. Tariel deals 4 damage to us. It will be a further 8 damage next turn thanks to the double strike. And the Angels do have Vigilance, of course, so they can attack first and then blow stuff up. So getting rid of the Peer. And leaving our Ezuri alone, so Tariel can reanimate something. Alright, Sylvan Library, that's what we're looking to do this turn. So let's play the Herald of Secret Dreams, and hopefully we can actually get some plus counters onto that at some point this game. Sylvan Library into play. I'm thinking we're going to have to go for the Peer and Toothy. A Beast Within onto the Peer and Toothy. So continuing to chump block the Toothy might be a good idea. The problem is they're probably going to reanimate Peer in response to Tariel. Don't know if they're going to actually activate that this turn. We'll pass over priority to them. They should do. Alright, yeah, so we'll go for the Beast Within now because they can just activate it again during their upkeep and get even more stuff. That will force them to recast that at least, and we're not taking as much damage in the air from the double strike this way. Okay, they got the Forgotten Ancient that time, so they'll be able to pile plus counters onto Toothy. They don't have haste at the moment, thanks to blowing up their own Swiftfoot boots. And they drew into a Gaia-Each Sanitarium, so we're both in the same boat on that one. Draw a card and discard it straight away. Could be useful doing it for them. Maybe we each put a creature in the bin with that. So probably, yeah, that is 8 damage and a further 6 is 14 damage. So I think I'm just going to have to block with the Herald. Okay, they didn't recast their commander again, strangely. Sure they can afford it. Yeah, I will untap the mana vault here, because if we're desperate for mana we can always just tap it down again. Alright, there's a Thrumming Bird. See what we can draw. Okay, just lands, so let's put that on top and pay 4 life. We're just not going to do anything whatsoever this game, seemingly. Alright, so plus counter going from Toothy, or going from the Forgotten Ancient onto Toothy. And then they draw for the turn, another plus counter on there. Okay, drawing with the Gaia-Each Sanitarium means that we're going to get rid of that forest. We know what's on top, so not shuffling in response to that. Does put another plus counter on the Toothy though. They discarded a land, obviously already had a card in hand from the draw step. And now a Wheel of Misfortune. They're definitely going to win that one. Otherwise they just go wide on us, so we'll just let them pay whatever into that. Maybe they'll assume that we're not going to put any life into it and just say 1 life. So maybe we can put like 3 life into it or something. Okay, and our opponent did do that, so we go down to 7 and we actually did draw some cards there, amazingly. Might be that they just go wide on us here. I think it's still too late for us, unfortunately. We've just done little to nothing. Still didn't draw into a Cyclonic Rift, which is what we really needed there. Okay, so we block there, and we take 4 damage. We can make the fetches tap for mana with Yavimaya next turn. But yeah, there's nothing we're doing here. We've been way too slow against our opponent, and our opponent's controlled us nicely as well. So we've got one more shot. We'll see what we draw into with the Sylvan Library. There's a Boseiju. Yeah, absolutely nothing. Put Boseiju on top and the Observer on top. Funny that we're getting into our Proliferate stuff right at the end of the game. Let's see, can we draw any more cards to the Rishkar's Expertise? Let's shuffle our library. Tropical Island. Play the Bloated Contaminator. Put in a plus counter on the Forgotten Ancient again. Then it can be Yavimaya, and we'll play this Rishkar's Expertise just for the fun of it. So what we really want to see here is a Mana Rock that we can throw down, like Mana Crypt or something, although that's probably just going to bolt us next turn anyway, and then also draw into the Cyclonic Rift. But there's little to nothing we're doing here, yeah, just lands and Simic Ascendancy, so just throw out the Oko. That can get rid of the flyer, and then we'll make sure to take a damage to the Mana Vault next turn, not that we'll make it to our next turn. Astral Cornucopia with 1 counter, and an Evolution Sage. Alright, so all but 2 of the counters being dumped onto the Toothy. Gaia-Each Sanitarium being activated, another plus counter enabler. Scavenging Ooze would have been way better before now, but we just haven't had the best of luck this game, unfortunately. Honoured Heirloom. Our opponent should just swing in with everything here. They're going wide on us, so we'll see how much life we go down by here. Just take it all. And down to -19. Well, hopefully you all enjoyed that one. We didn't have as good an amount of luck in that game, and our opponent controlled us nicely as well, like I said previously. Hopefully you all enjoyed the game regardless. I'm tribalkai. Thank you for watching.